Okay, today we're making a pilgrimage. We're making a pilgrimage to one of the sites, one of the possible sites that scholars have located for the cave of Polyphemus. Some put them on Sicily, I put them on Crete. We put them on southern Crete. We're going to go on a 3-hour hike. It's going to take us up through this unbelievably beautiful and rich landscape that's really pulsing with life. And I think that that's one of the most important things we have to remember as we read the Odyssey. It's not just a poem about like wars and heroes, but really it's a poem that celebrates the life force that lies behind all of those things. It's a call into the world in which we live. So you might be thinking like, why would we celebrate this idea of life force at the cave of Polyphemus? Isn't he just a one-eyed man-eating monster? Well, he is. But Polyphemus, you have to remember, and the rest of the Cyclops, they practice a life way that you see all around you in the world of Homer, a life way that makes everything possible. They're the herders, they're the agriculturalists, they're the rural denizens that make everything else possible. They're the cheesemakers. They're those things on which everyone else depends. And they're those people that form the core audience for the Odyssey itself. The rural denizens, the agriculturalists, the herders, the small town dwellers. They're the audience for the Odyssey. And thinking about that point of reception is incredibly important. And it puts us in a place where we can really appreciate the world in which these people lived. They lived in a rural landscape that provided everything that was necessary for the kings and the heroes, even for the gods themselves, to create a place within the world. This is a perfect spot to maybe think about that. And as we think about the home of Polyphemus and the Cyclops, it's a community. I mean, it's a rural community, but a community nonetheless. A community that's simple. A community that speaks to a much more rustic time. And it's this place that we see all around us. We see all around us in the Odyssey. I mean, you see it at the island of Calypso at Ogygia. You see it at the island of Circe and Aeaea. We see it in, the fields much like this. The fruitful fields of the Cyclops. It's beautiful. And it celebrates a call into the life force that the caretakers or the stewards of this world, the herders, the farmers, even the Cyclops themselves, they do something that cares for and respects this kind of life force or life energy within the world itself. And this is part and parcel of the main theme of the Odyssey itself. I mean, Odysseus' wanderings are a punishment. What he seeks is nostos, the ancient Greek word for a homecoming. And when Odysseus makes his homecoming, when he finds his nostos, where does he find it? He finds it at the simple abode of the humble swineherd, Eumaeus. And if we think about that nostos and that homecoming, the people that add value to that moment, those are the people that have a respect for this life force that they see all around them. Eumaeus, Philetius, Eurycleia, the nurse, his wife Penelope, even old Laertes, his father, they endure, they suffer patiently. They have a respect for their life force and the life force that they find around them. Not so Odysseus, not so the half pirate, half wolfish man whose only respect for any life force is his own. A person who saves his own skin at all costs. I mean, that's a form of this, but a form that demonstrates its own pernicious nature. It's detrimental. He doesn't bring back a single one of his comrades from Troy. And that kind of self-interested respect for life force, that is a call into the positive qualities, the excellence of those people who form a counter-narrative to Odysseus' own exploits. So when we think about what you want to be reading or how you want to be reading, maybe even more importantly, the Odyssey and the epic and the call of the poem, it's a call into the real, and it's a call into how we think about and live in the world around us. And the people who bear the punishment in the Odyssey, I mean, think about it. The suitors, the Phaeacians, even Polyphemus, who gobbles down his gory banquets. Odysseus himself is punished because they all are punished because they abuse the fruits of the land. And this is an affront to a culture where hunger was real, where a famine was really just a bad harvest away. I mean, even the dead are hungry. And when we encounter Odysseus and he makes that sacrifice in the underworld, and there's that pool of blood beneath his feet, the dead come hungry for a taste of that blood, which is its own kind of life force, which Odysseus still only uses for his own self-interest. Are we surprised by this? No. The apple doesn't fall from the tree, or doesn't fall far from the tree with Odysseus. His own grandfather is Autolycus, and that means the wolf himself. And Odysseus embodies this wolfish understanding of self-interest that really is a threat to the life force that's all around him. And that would have been painfully obvious to the rural folk who knew and appreciated the threat of hunger and the pains that that caused. So we'll walk up to the cave of Polyphemus, but as we do, I want you to make a note of the landscape that you see blooming all around you. If we're lucky, we'll find some sheep. Maybe we'll find some goats. Because as I walk up this landscape, I see that the world of Homer is real, and that it calls us into a world that we need to think about, and that makes that breaking bread, or that participation in the call of Homer's poetry, that can make that real. And if you aren't called into thinking about the life force of the world that's around you, the poetry's not working. The oral tradition's been broken, and you have to find a way to restore that as you entertain the poetry of Homer and answer its call to think about the world in which you live. Let's go. Okay, I think this is a really good point to reflect on the fact that the ancient world took work to get places. I mean, whether you're going on feet as we are, or you're going on a boat as Odysseus did, it was a perilous journey. And I think that that's really what hooks us into the kind of logic of the Odyssey in Homer's narrative. It was an exchange of stories and dialogues, travelers' tales, sailors' tales, and really get that in books 9 through 12. And as we head into the land of the Cyclops themselves, you really get a sense of how the landscape gives rise to the logic of the story itself. I mean, it would be hard for us to think of the Cyclops as a sympathetic figure, but I think really at the end when he's blinded and hurt, his eye has been sizzled and put out and blood gushes out from his forehead. And as he strokes his favorite black ram, there really is a sense of empathy there. That there is a kind of connection, a life force that needs to be respected. And I think that's the continuity that ties the Iliad and the Odyssey together that often gets overlooked. And that is this life force that connects the landscape to the animals, to the agriculture, and to the people, and even to the Cyclops, to the gods at the very top end of that. And that respect for life force, I think, is exceptionally important for you to keep in mind. Even when we go look at the Cyclops, the brute of brutes. Let's check this out. The caves are situated in the mountainside. It's almost as if they've got their own little cul-de-sac of one-eyed giants that are connected together in ways that really makes them a community. And it is not surprising then that when Polyphemus cries out in rage, that the other Cyclops come running. Much more of a kind of community and a sense of interbeing and connectivity that you might have otherwise imagined. All right, let's go see if we can see the view from the side of the caves. All right. Yeah. Okay. I guess one thing we have to commend the Cyclops on as their choice of view from their back porch. Because as we look out over the Cretan Sea, it's magnificent. And just off on the horizon is the island of Ogygia, which is the most magnificent landscape that Homer describes in the Odyssey. It's the home of Calypso. And when we think about how these landscapes are tied together, we reflect back on that idea of life force. I think it's important that we think in the Odyssey that the continuity of these different books holding together, they're connected to a life force. And to us who have an overabundance of food and an overabundance of calories, it might seem maybe even unbelievable. But the essence of this epic is the importance of food, and that people be able to eat. And in 9, 10, 11, and 12, we've got all kinds of characters and players that don't respect the life force that's given up for the creation of a meal. Whether we're talking about Scylla, who snatches 6 of Odysseus' men, or we talk about Polyphemus, who eats 6 of Odysseus' men, both cave dwellers, by the way. Or we talk about Charybdis, who swallows down, gulps down entire boats of men. Or we talk about the Lastygones, the cannibals who eat 500 of Odysseus' men. Or we talk about the sirens who lure men to their death and snack on their bones. Those are people, including Odysseus himself, who has no respect for the life force that lies behind that necessity, that importance of food, eating communally to the group. And this is what ends up this whirlwind of fantastical sea stories, is when Odysseus' own men can't restrain their knives from the cattle of the sun. And they don't respect that life force, the sun itself, that allows everything else to grow up in this wonderfully beautiful landscape that we call Greece. So that's it. I think when we hook the Odyssey back up into the landscape, we can find out that there's very basic messages that a pre-modern people would understand, and that a postmodern people, meaning ourselves, should pay better attention to, as 4 great famines threaten to disrupt the Mediterranean again. And we, the wealthiest nation in the world, what are we prepared to do? Not much. So hooking back up into the life force that ties us together to the way in which that we all experience the world, that's part of myth, and it's part of a mythological story that I think maybe we need now more than ever.